Hello and welcome to this quick video explaining why there were tensions between the East and the West after World War II. So that's between communist Russia or the Soviet Union and the capitalist West, led primarily by the USA. So whilst we're looking through this PowerPoint presentation and then through the video there, so in order to do that, we first need to understand what this ideological difference was, and it was a difference between communism and capitalism. So two key political ideologies linked to key economic ideas as well. So communism, it focuses on this belief that the state should own all businesses and industry. So everything that makes money, in essence, should be owned by the state. Under communism, there is no private ownership. So as an individual, you cannot go out and form your own company. Everyone would work for the government. And the idea behind this is they thought it would bring more equality and everyone would be at the same level. So it's primarily to benefit poor working class people and remove away from society the rich upper class business owners. Now, the Communist Party would be the only political party in communism. Okay, there are no free elections. If there are elections, you can choose a communist or you can choose a communist. You don't have a choice, as we do in Britain today, of multiple different political parties. On top of that, the government controls the media and there is no freedom of speech. So again, you can't criticise the government. The government only shares with you the information that it wants you to know about. Now, this contrasts massively with capitalism. Okay, so capitalism is focused on the ideal that individuals are free to create businesses and make a profit. So if they can see a gap in the market, they can form a business and whatever profit they make is theirs. Now, there is a mix of state and private ownership, but the state really only provides what is necessary and essential. So things like the armed forces for defence, like the police force for law and order, like the fire service to ensure your house doesn't burn down, a national health service in the case of Britain. The rest, private ownership, and people in essence will pay for what they want. Now, what capitalists believe is that this will ensure a higher standard of service. So if there are 5 different broadband providers, you will go for the broadband provider that gives you the best value for money. So therefore, it should actually increase standards across the system. There's multiple political parties and democratic elections are held. So you can pick whichever political party you most align to, and you do that via a democratic election. And there is, of course, freedom of speech. So you can criticise the government, news can be shared about any event that happens, it's not controlled. So these systems are completely different. Okay, you can't agree to disagree between communism and capitalism. They just do not link together at all. They do not work together at all. They are completely different, at opposite ends of the political spectrum. Now, in 1945, the West was capitalist, so the UK, the USA, France, Western Europe were all capitalist. And then in the East, the Soviet Union, what had been the Russian Empire, but now the Soviet Union, was communist. So what you had with the fall of Germany in 1945 was the renewal of this clash of ideas. But it isn't the first time it happened. And again, to understand the depth of the tension, we need to look a bit back. So in 1917, there was the Russian Revolution. There were 2 revolutions in Russia in 1917. We're going to focus on the October one, the second one, when the Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, rise up. They lead a revolution in Russia and they successfully take control of the country. They replace the government. A communist system is established all across the Russian Empire. They're completely in control. They form a secret police. They form the Soviet Red Army. Bolsheviks, who are going to become the communists, are completely in control. And eventually they will execute the Tsar, who was the monarch of Russia, and his wife and children in quite a brutal massacre. They also fought a brutal civil war against the supporters of the Tsar. Okay, not everyone in Russia wanted to be a communist, and large numbers of people fought back. So there was a particularly brutal civil war. Now, Britain, France, and the USA felt threatened by the revolution. Okay, they were worried that this communist revolution would spread to their countries and would overthrow their established systems. So they decided they were going to deal with it by invading northern Russia. Okay, they send troops, and it shows on the map, the bit highlighted in red, just down here with the arrow. Troops are sent to Archangel in northern Russia. Okay, the idea was they would support the White Russians, the supporters of the Tsar, and they destroy communism. They crush it now, and then it wouldn't spread any further. This was massively unsuccessful. The White Russian armies were ill-disciplined, ill-organized, and ultimately easily defeated. And Britain, the British and US troops were forced to withdraw from northern Russia. So it was a massive failure. But again, this sets in the mind of the communists in Russia that the West is willing to attack them because it has happened. So the idea that the West might invade is not far-fetched because it literally happened in 1918. Then, of course, we fast forward to the Second World War. So the Second World War begins, obviously, September 1939, the German invasion of Poland. Japan would later invade British Malaya in December 1941, and, of course, attack Pearl Harbor, transitioning it into a world war rather than primarily European one. Now, in 1940, Germany had invaded France. They'd conquered all of the areas of northern France here, and then brought the southern areas of France under their control via the Vichy regime. In 1940, we then had the Battle of Britain, where they attempt to gain control of the air in the hope that they might be able to invade Britain. This is ultimately unsuccessful, and what this leads to in 1941 is the invasion of the Soviet Union via Operation Barbarossa. So, Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941. They conquer almost as far as Moscow. They cause massive damage to the Soviet Union. But what this means, the Soviet Union is now on the side of Britain because they're united with a common enemy in Germany. And then with the entry of the USA into the war in December 1941, these three powers are now united against Germany. Now, the only thing really uniting them is their hatred of Germany. It's the fact that all three of them agree that Germany must be defeated. Politically, economically, they're completely at odds with each other. In normal circumstances, they wouldn't have been allied in any way, shape or form. But they unite against Germany. Now, Germany's defeated in May 1945. Berlin is actually captured by the Soviet Union. So the Soviet army gets as far as across to here and conquers Germany. And then Japan surrenders in August 1945. Now, what this means is that at the end of, or in mid-1945, the Western Allies and the USSR are no longer united by the need to defeat Japan and Germany because the war is over. And we're in a situation whereby the Soviet Union appears very threatening to the Western Allies, and vice versa. Russia feels threatened by the Western Allies because of their previous stance on communism. So in Europe, the Soviet Red Army, marked with the red squares here, has advanced deeply into Europe and massively outnumbers the Western Allies. They've got a huge numerical advantage in men, in machines, in ammunition. And there was a genuine fear that they would just continue to invade through Germany and keep pushing and take control of as much of Europe as they could. There was also a fear that they were not going to return control of areas like Poland and Czechoslovakia. They'd advance through to attack Germany. Equally in Asia, if we look over here with the red squares, just up here is Russia itself. Down here is Japan. Now, the Russians had agreed that when Germany was defeated, they would engage the Japanese in warfare as well. They would attack Japan. So after Germany surrenders in May, the Soviet Red Army begins to march south through Asia, into northern China, and ultimately into Korea. Now, they keep moving through Korea until they meet US forces here on the 38th parallel, which is the current border between North and South Korea. So again, we're in a situation where you have US and Soviet forces facing off with a genuine fear that the Soviets aren't going to stop. And one of the major fears that America had, but also Britain had, was that the Soviets would just keep going and that they would move through Asia and begin to spread communism through Indochina, into India itself, and ultimately into Japan. So crucially, there's no enemy to unite against. Germany and Japan are defeated, so the divides between communist East and capitalist West began to reappear, and both sides genuinely believed that the other wanted to destroy them. The capitalists believed that the communists wanted to spread their ideology across Europe and cause revolutions and cause the overthrow of the established order of the governments, and the communists genuinely believed that America and Britain wanted to attack and invade them. Again, based on their previous interactions with those countries, there is a degree of logic there. And so, in 1945, at the end of the Second World War and the beginning of the Cold War, that is the situation. Two massive superpowers, both with large armies, both with massive amounts of weapons and technology, are now facing off against each other and clashing over these political ideologies.